Alright, let's get serious. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Jakel, the world's worst YouTuber. Today, I've come to address a hate comment, and to be fair, I'm not overly bothered personally. What I'm concerned about is the sheer and brazen lack of logic that was used in this particular comment. This comment was seen on a video, one of my first videos, so it was really not well done. And that video was entitled Hate Moshing, an Angry Rant. And in it I talked about my experience with hate moshing, as well as some of the ethical dilemmas I see in hate moshing. And though I haven't really addressed it that much since, maybe a couple of times here and there, I'm still personally a big advocate for understanding that hate moshing is not fun and isn't okay, and it actually causes serious damage to not only people but the venues in which host these hardcore shows where people hate mosh. Now I am going to go ahead and go back and reiterate kind of what hate moshing is and what the difference is between hate moshing and regular moshing. If you want, go ahead and take a look at the previous video that I had made, but it was one of my first. I didn't really know what I was doing. The lighting was terrible, the editing was fucking god-awful, and I was also about 60, 70 pounds heavier then, so I'm not as pretty as the face you see before you today. Which doesn't really overly matter. Point is, it's a culture shock. So, to begin, moshing. If you've heard about metal, you've heard about the mosh pit. If you've heard about heavy metal shows, you've heard about the mosh pit. And there is a certain stigma around moshing, and it is, it's French for fight, so that means you're going into the pit to fight one another. Not really the case. See, in a traditional mosh pit, when you're in a metal show, there's a lot of high energy and a lot of rebellious attitude. So, the mosh pit was an invention for there to be a group in the show where you could run around and jump around and get out your energy and vent that in a somewhat safe way. You know what, I'm just going to throw up a video real quick about what a traditional mosh pit might look like. Now you see there's something very specific. When I first learned about moshing, I heard all of the negative stereotypes and connotations of the mosh pit, that people get hurt, people get damaged. And then I actually started going to metal shows, and I actually started experiencing heavy metal live. And over time, over a few years of going to metal shows, I learned that it's not as dangerous as it is cracked up to be. You see, there's a sort of unspoken code, an unspoken rule, because we're all brothers and sisters under the banner of metal. Therefore, we should have respect for one another. So, you're going to run around, you're going to push around. Odds are you're not going to typically throw fists. You put your arms up, and you push, and you run around, you run around, you run around, and you push, and you elbow, and you hip throw, and it's a good time. You're not actually swinging, you're not actually kicking, you're just going and running around, getting some cardio in, meanwhile enjoying the show with people under the unifying flag of heavy metal. We come to the nexus in my life where I was only really exposed to Slipknot and Disturbed and Five Finger Death Punch, more of the more radio popular metal bands. And those are the types of shows where you're more likely to have a traditional mosh pit. What I didn't understand was that local shows were a little bit different, especially in the area I was from, which was right on the lakefront of Lake Michigan, on the border of Wisconsin and Illinois, right between Chicago and Milwaukee. There is a very rich culture of music, all kinds of music. If you want to find it, the only thing that might be a little difficult to find is country. There's hip-hop, there's straight-up rap, there's an indie punk scene, there's a hardcore punk scene, there's a metal scene, and then there's the hardcore scene. The hardcore scene is a little bit different. The difference was immediately apparent. Instantly walking in to the venue, which was a repurposed Mason Lodge, there's instantly a palpable tension and frustration upon walking through the doors and into the showroom. I didn't really pay much attention to it. I was a little more wild and off the walls then, so I was just like, yeah, metal show. I didn't even know really what hardcore or any of the core subgenres were. I knew what I liked and that was it. And then the pit opens. Stupidly, ignorantly, I jump in and think it's going to be a traditional kind of mosh. I was quickly informed by a fist to the side of the head, right in the temple. And if you're like me, or I may have said before, I've got a glass temple. You get me right there, that ball of nerves, I'm out. Disoriented, seeing stars. I'm like, yo, what the fuck just happened? To me, that was a very quick and apparent no-no for a mosh pit. So that is disrespectful. It is off-putting. And now I'm genuinely injured. And as I sit off to the side, regaining my bearings, I realize this is how they're just behaving. This is just how it is. This is how they are. And I understand I lacked a certain code of conduct that this different kind of scene was privy to. And because I just didn't know, I didn't get it, and I still don't quite get it. Because the mosh pit to me is supposed to be a safe haven for people to run and jump around. Get off that extra energy. Share an experience in the name of the band that you all enjoy. Now comes along the hate mosh where these people are swinging on each other, dancing like a bunch of monkeys, looking like they're throwing their poo around. And no, for the record, that is not a racist comment. They look like fucking chimpanzees, swinging their fists, and just, and that's what it looks like. Here's a video to prove my point. In the end, that venue got shut down. Not just because of the hate moshing, but because the crowd was the scene. The people within the scene were full of spite and hatred, and fist fights would often break out, whether it be a personal beef amongst people or somebody got rubbed the wrong way in the mosh, which is something that happens when you're deliberately swinging on people. Others get pissed off that they are now injured and you deliberately struck them. That venue got shut down because of destruction and a bad reputation that that particular group of Masons no longer wanted to deal with. Because how are you going to want to keep people coming to your place when the cops are getting called every time that particular group of people comes in? Not to mention your property is getting broken, destroyed. Who's got to pay for it? You do. So why do you want people to keep coming in, breaking your shit, getting the cops called? I don't want to put up with it. I'm not going to assume an organization as old and as standing as the Freemasons want to associate with that kind of behavior. And it's not like this was misunderstood. It was talk of the town that if they kept up their shit, they were going to close it down. And they still persisted. In spite of understanding that if they kept doing the same shit, that their main venue was going to get shut down. They still did it. Did they not believe them, or did they not care? Again, not everybody is like this. Not every scene is like this. But the common thread seems to be that these people, well, brashly and arrogantly, when under criticism, will just go ahead and say, well, then you got no business being in the hardcore scene. Leave the hardcore scene alone. That's clearly not for you. It's not about me. It's about the ethics behind it. And the fact that if you go around doing this shit, you're still going to wind up having to deal with the repercussions of your actions. But as long as you keep with the attitude, oh, well, then you just don't understand the hardcore scene. All of these venues are going to shut down, and then your favorite bands are no longer going to have a place for them to play. If you really want to support your friend's band, you want to get them out there, you want to help give them a place to play, act like civilized fucking adults. Is it that difficult? If a venue comes in and says, you're breaking our shit, keep it up, you're not going to get to play here anymore. Why are you still going to do it and then just ride it off in one broad swoop and say, oh, well then fuck you, because you just don't get the hardcore scene, we'll play somewhere else. And then that place is going to get shut down, and then that place is going to get shut down, and so on and so forth. Then you got to play in your friend's mom's basement, or your friend's basement, because maybe they actually own their own place that has a basement, who knows. I do know this is the case sometimes. How much destruction do you think they want to put up with if they own their own home? And now they've got to fix holes in the walls. They've got to deal with the cops getting called. And now if the cops keep getting called to an individual location, the cops are going to be on high guard at that place. So now that person is going to get slapped with fines, is going to have to deal with all other kinds of ridiculous shit for having and hosting disorderly get-togethers. And God forbid any of you smoke pot, because frankly here in the U.S., at least half of the places, it's still illegal. At the end of 2018, here in the U.S., pot is still mostly and vastly illegal. I'm pro 420. I don't smoke, but I don't see anything wrong with it. But it's still illegal, and if the cops get called, your ass is going to get at least a fine and something on your record. Do you really want to deal with that? All because, oh, you don't understand the hardcore scene. We're going to fucking do it anyway. Which is exactly the attitude that brings me to this fun little comment that I received. Immediately, right out the gate, you can tell this fat ass doesn't mosh. Okay, you know what? I was pretty big, okay? I'm not gonna lie. I'm still not thin. More thin than I was in that video. By far. So I'll give you that. I was pretty big. I was fat. But to say that you can tell that I don't mosh. Okay, I'm not going to say that I need to prove anything to anybody whether or not I mosh. I haven't moshed in like 3 or 4 years at this point. I'll admit, at this point, I don't really mosh. I don't really go to shows, don't really have the money, and in my area there's not really a lot of places for which I can mosh. But to make that broad assumption, is it just because I'm fat? Or is it because I disagree with you? Or is it because I don't understand the hardcore scene? I don't get it. And if you want to be technical, no, I don't hate mosh. How am I going to go ahead and say, hate moshing is this, that, the other, and then I'll and be a little troll under the bridge being like, hey, fuck hate moshing, hey. And then I'm going to go ahead and hate mosh. It doesn't really work that way. It wouldn't look good on myself. So, no, I don't hate mosh, but regular moshing, if I have the opportunity, if I am in good spirits, and the mosh is available, yeah, I'm gonna mosh. But that's not the point. The point is that this individual has assumed, for whatever reason and whatever logic they find themselves sound with, that I do not mosh. I'm assuming that you've only seen the one video. So you have that little 15-minute sliver of my entire life and how I view the world. How are you going to make assumptions to suggest that I don't mosh? And even if I don't, even if I didn't, ever, how are you going to assume this? Just by such a little sliver of my life that you have witnessed. Next line. We hate mosh here in New Orleans. I'm fucking glad for you. If you have found a happy medium and it is a welcome opportunity in New Orleans for you to hate mosh, by all means, go ahead. If you have found a way to not cause destruction to property or other people and still get away with hate moshing, God bless America. I am grateful for that. Then I have no problem with the hate moshing. If it's just the people in the mosh that are being affected by the swinging and flinging of emotional poo, then by all means. My issue is with the hate mosh. There's a difference between hardcore dancing and hate moshing. And then there's the other level of crowd killing. See, in hardcore dancing, they have the same moves, but they have their own little section off to the side where they do their little dance. It still looks ridiculous, but they're not causing anybody any harm. Then there's the hate moshing, where it's generally within just in the pit where they are swinging on each other. But now they're not sticking to themselves, they're swinging around within the pit. So in my little story, I was the one that was dumb for getting in the pit because I didn't understand that hate mosh was a thing. To further the point, there's crowd killing, where they do the same things, but they swing themselves, get into the crowd, unsuspecting, unwilling, non-consenting bystanders who are now getting swung on, punched, kicked, and people are even getting sent to the hospital because they weren't prepared, weren't expecting, and just got their asses handed to them. If you want a more in-depth case, this is probably the second or third time I'm going to suggest it, but on Spectre Sounds Media, Glenn Fricker covers this and shares very many of the same sentiments that I do on the subject of hate moshing and crowd killing. But he goes in depth of another situation where a girl was not able to pay the medical bills. She had fractures all over her face, all other kinds of extensive damage, and her teeth were exceptionally fucked up. She needed dental surgery, facial reconstruction, because somebody crowd killed on her. That is the shit that I have a problem with. So if you guys have found a way in New Orleans to avoid that kind of bullshit and you can hate mosh happily amongst yourselves, by all means, go right ahead. That's not what I have a problem with. What I have a problem with is the needless destruction of people and property and the asinine defenses of, well, then you just don't understand hardcore. Oh, you're just a badass. Oh, you're just a sissy because you don't do what we do. Fuck you! You're trying to find some kind of excuse to defend your shitty behavior. All you're doing is proving how arrogant you really are. And if this does not apply to you, if this is not your behavior, then I'm not talking about you. But if you are already offended and the shoe fits, lace that bitch up and run with it, Sally, because I ain't having none of it here. But he says, what a sissy. Again! Have you completely ignored all of my points in the video? Have you completely ignored everything that I have said about hate moshing? And my issue with being concerned about people and their things makes me a sissy? Okay. If that's the case, then I am the sissiest motherfucker that you've ever experienced. What? Is it because I'm wearing eye makeup? Or is it because I have actually gotten into makeup because I think it makes my face look good, and I actually have another type of art form that I am expressing on my person and my body? Is it because I've grown my hair out? Wait, this was before I started doing any of that. This was before the makeup, before I grew my hair out, before I lost several pounds. All you have to go off of is a little snippet of what I decided to commit to video to explain the ethical dilemma of hate moshing and crowd killing. And because I don't see it your way, because I have a problem with things getting broken that aren't yours, then that makes me a sissy. If that's the case, I'm a sissy. But I'm okay with that. And I could go on some diatribe about how tough and how much I can lift and assert my masculine dominance over you, even though I've never met you. But that wouldn't work. And that is not the point of this logic here. That is not the whole point of this diatribe. The point is the lack of logic that this, I'm going to remove the person and say only this, because I don't know how else they feel. I don't know what logic they are using, but on this comment alone, what has been portrayed to me here is a serious lack of logic, broad swooping assumptions, and a lack of wanting to hear another side of somebody's story. You hear what you want to hear, you infer based off of that, based on your own worldviews, without taking other people's points of view into consideration, and just, you're a sissy. Okay. Good job, Biff. Your brain is showing, Kelso. You are the king. Then, before I am being called a sissy, my final point. This person says something to the nature of, you'd probably call the cops on us. No. I would just get up and walk away. I would leave. The whole point is I want to preserve the venues and the reputations of the bands and help them have a place to play their music. I don't have a problem with the band unless they advocate for this kind of dumb bullshit, and then they are only helping in the factor of closing down venues and limiting their places to play. So if my whole problem is that venues, okay, half of my problem is that venues are getting shut down, why am I going to call the cops? That's only going to help aid in the struggle. That's only going to help bring a negative reputation around the band that I am there to represent and to support, and the bands that you are there to represent and support. And I'm going to be calling the cops for what reason? Unless somebody is injured or somebody is injuring somebody. I don't call 911. I try to personally solve issues amongst people and with debate. And if I can't, I walk away. If I don't see the point in doing that, I walk away. Unless somebody is being injured, unless somebody is doing that injuring, such as getting the shit kicked out of them. If somebody gets pulled off of the person they are kicking the shit out of, and then proceed to go back, then I'm going to call the cops. If this person is on a rampage and just breaking all kinds of shit, then I might call the cops. This one person needs to be stopped. Or a group of people, who knows. But just because I disagree and don't understand the point of view, you know what? I'm going to leave that to you and your own karma. and the built-up repercussions and your probably subsequent lack of responsibility that you will take furthering forward, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be there when the cops do get called. I'm going to leave and I'm going to save my own ass so my face isn't on the mugshots or the newspaper clipping when some shit does go down. I might have a concern for other people and other people's things, but one of my main things is and always will be self-preservation. I don't want to get my ass handed to me. I don't want to get arrested. And even if I was concerned, if I was less concerned about myself, then I would still have a concern for how it would affect my family, whether that be my parents or my fiance or my son. How are my actions going to affect them? That's also what I'm concerned about. If I get thrown in jail for a week and then have to deal with all kinds of other court bullshit afterwards, they're getting the shit end of the stick out of that deal. Even I don't care how I am affected. I care about how they are affected. So I'm not calling the fucking cops! Ah! Moral of the story. If you are able to hate mosh in a controlled environment, nobody's getting hurt, nothing is getting broken or damaged, people or property, and by all means, please proceed. Anything else is my opinion. And you don't have to agree with me, I don't have to agree with you. That is part of the beauty of this world. We don't need to agree with one another to get along peacefully and harmoniously. My problem is when people go ahead and break shit and damage other people's things, and they wrap up in a nice little closed-minded philosophy of, oh, you just don't understand, so fuck you. Oh, you don't understand, so I'm going to beat your ass. You know what? Okay, go ahead, beat my ass. You might be able to. Who knows? That's not the point. What is happening is you're showing your ignorance and arrogance by being this way. You are free to have an opinion. You are free to your way of life. But you are not free of the repercussions and consequences of your actions. And by blocking off other people's points of view, you are not allowing yourself to see the error of your ways, which is something that's very difficult for the average person, myself included, to handle. But at least I'm willing to listen and debate, and there are plenty of other people out there that are. So, if you are not part of the mindset of people that are like this, I'm not talking about you. If you are hate moshing and nothing is getting damaged, by all means, proceed. I don't have to like it. But by using broad generalizations and swooping assumptions that blanket everything so you can wrap it up into your own little worldview and philosophy with instantly rejecting, in spite of the logic and argument being presented before you, you're only making yourself look like an asshole. And then other people are going to follow your example, or you have followed similar people's example, and that's going to infect the world around us. So, maybe I'm not going to do much by doing these little videos. Maybe I'm not going to make that much of a difference. But there should be a counter-argument and a counter-debate established when something like this happens. So there can be at least a little median that can be established, a little middle path. And in that, we can help bring the world to harmony. Because at the end of the day, light and darkness will always battle, points of view will always clash, and opposing viewpoints will always have a problem with one another. It is that balance that is sought and rendered in the middle, where the middle ground can actually exist and prosper within. That's the end of my rant for today. Until next time, much love, peace out, namaste, and goodbye. So, are you familiar with traditional moshing and mosh pits?
Yes.
How would you explain kind of what that is? Just a general frame of reference for regular traditional moshing.
Usually just a bunch of guys down in the pit, jumping around, having a good time, rocking out to their favorite metal tunes.
Is it usually very destructive, or is it just having a good time? And would you say there's an air of respect, or is there a lack thereof?
Usually, from what I've heard, there's an air of respect. There's, definitely, watch out for, say, like a girl gets exposed or something like that, help her cover up, that sort of thing. Jump around, have a good time. Don't be an ass about it.
He's seen none of the clips or what I said. This is 2-3 hours later, and he's agreeing with me. There's an air of respect in the mosh pit. So I'm going to have Jake. Underneath the screen, I have my TV with my Xbox and YouTube set up. So I'm going to show him a video and get his genuine, original reaction.
So it's basically getting in the middle of the pit and flailing like a retard?
I said monkeys flinging poop violently.
Accurate.
And see, that's the shit. They just jump into the crowd, and that's part of the problem. Like, the part of the thing is, like, they will jump into the crowd and swing on people. Like, to me, if they kept to their own and had their own little pit, that'd be fine. But they jump into the crowd and fuck people up.
They're trying to hit innocent bystanders that are just sitting there trying to enjoy the show. If you're not in the pit, you're not part of, you're not part of the group that's wanting to do this. And personally, I mean, you pay so much money for a music ticket to go see your favorite band, and you're just going to flail around and get a bloody nose while you're there? Like, it's the stupidest thing ever.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, he did not see any of my video yet. He just kind of walked in, and I said, hey, can I get your opinion?
Showed up with a guitar and said, let's jam.
Yeah, so, now I'm leaving. Okay. Peace. And let's see some love for Jake in the comments. I don't get any love in the comments except for from the people I know specifically. So let's get some love for Jake.